This month on the Ninja Tune podcast, our producer Jack Smith sat down with Maribou State to discuss their beginnings in music, their recording process, and the September release of their most recent album, Kingdoms in Colour, via Ninja imprint Counter Records. Maribou State will be heading out on tour across the UK and North America in early 2019, including a massive show at London's Brixton Academy. You can find out more on their website, mariboustate.co.uk/tour. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts.
Maribou State, thank you so much for joining us on the Ninja Tune podcast.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome, thank you.
For those that don't know, as a sort of introduction to you guys, how did you first start making music together?
We first started making music when we were about 15 or 16, because we grew up in the same village, and Liam had a band when we were at school, and the bass player from that band was leaving, so I ended up asking if I could join the band, or Liam asked me to join, and then from there on we kind of worked in bands together for a few years, and then went to university, and kind of continued from there. But Maribou State actually formed when we were about 20, and we were leaving uni.
Years ago, so.
Yeah.
Well, you obviously you released your album Kingdoms in Colour this year on Ninja Tune imprint Counter, but what's the story behind the album title, if there is one?
I think the title came around from, we just wanted a title that kind of encapsulated the feeling that it was an album that was inspired by a lot of different places and a lot of different people, and I guess it had been written over the course of 3 years where we'd been travelling a lot, and that title just felt quite unifying and quite positive.
The lead single off the album featured Houston's Karangabin. I was just wondering how did that collaboration come about?
So we became fans of theirs just before we put our album out, and then when we come to do our London headline show at Coco around about 2016, we invited them to support us, and we got to meet them then and kind of made friends and stayed in contact over the following years, and just basically said that one day we would we both wanted to collaborate on a track and work together, and we tried loads of different options, and it was kind of looking like we weren't going to get anything together, and then towards the end of the writing process we managed to get a song with them featuring on it, which was a big accomplishment for us.
When you were putting together the album, sort of linking into what you guys were talking about in terms of the spirit of it being an album of many different sort of places, you've used a lot of field recordings, and I was just wondering what kind of inspired you to consciously use more organic sounds?
I think it was probably just listening to artists like Burial and stuff when we were at uni, and initially that sparked the interest of getting found sound and going out with a field recorder. And then when we moved back down from Leeds, Liam ended up buying a field recorder, and we'd go out around the village, or when we were away on holiday we'd just go out and record hitting gates and stuff like that, or whatever, just to make a weird drum sound, or more just atmospheric stuff of people just talking in a cafe, or Yeah, I guess it kind of spiraled from that, and I think for us, field recordings have always been used in a way that they kind of connect the dots a little bit, and they help kind of like merge and kind of earth the tracks in a way, which is a weird way, and create like a bit more of like a personal touch as
Yeah,
well.
I was going to say, to add, it's like having that personal connection, especially with some of the songs that are written like abroad or where we've travelled and been inspired by a place. It's really nice to actually put something in there from that time, and then you have like a direct memory linked to it. It kind of feels more personal, more tangible as well.
So in the spirit of that, like where were some of the places that you feel like you either got the best field recordings or your favourite place to kind of find those sounds?
What it's kind of it depends really, but one of the trips that we did was quite fruitful. Was after we did our first tour over in India. Chris and I, after the gigs, we went off separately and kind of had a holiday and travelled around the country a bit. And at that point, Chris had brought a field recorder as well, so we were both capturing stuff. And we both got a lot of really good stuff from that trip and used a lot of it on the album actually, which was really nice.
Do you think on that sort of, you know, on the tip of the field recordings in India, are there any specific environments or landscapes that you feel kind of really inspired this specific album?
Yeah, it's a place in India which actually we didn't travel to during the writing of the album, but it's a place called Srinagar, which is like it's kind of, it is in the Himalayas still, but I just feel like that landscape kind of perfectly fits in with the sound of,
Lake Dal.
yeah. And there's something about just because you can stay on houseboats there in the middle of the lake and you can look out and you can see the Himalayas in the distance, and I just feel like that sound that image has always been in my head when we were writing the album. And we had a track actually that was called Srinagar right at the beginning. It was one of the first tracks that was written. So I guess subconsciously maybe that's always been there kind of in the background.
So where was the album recorded? Was it sort of a mix of places on tour? Was it like one specific studio or?
Yeah, we started. So the main process from the first album, towards the second album, was that we left Hertfordshire, moved into London, and we got this studio that we're in now. So we got this new space and we bought a load of new kit. We set everything up, and initially we started writing and recording here over the course of like a year, which was while we were still touring the Portrait stuff as well. And we started to realise that we weren't really getting much of a result just from the big shift of moving into the city, like new studio, and our lives had changed quite dramatically as well with how much we were touring and leaving home properly, like for the first time. So then we started kind of doing these writing trips with our friend Jack, who obviously heavily featured on the first album's Pedestrian, and then the second album he's featured quite a lot as well. And we started basically hiring these like cottages out in like the Cotswolds or down in like the North Downs in Kent, and we would basically pack the studio up and drive there, spend 2 weeks just writing, kind of isolated, turn our phones off, and did that like 4 or 5 times, was it?
Yeah, it was like, yeah.
I think we did 4 or 5 trips, and that became really fruitful for going away and writing and kind of getting inspired. And I think it was probably a bit of a throwback to how the first album was made, and it was made in the shed in like my parents' garden, and we weren't really disturbed, we were in the countryside. So I think we were kind of like pining after that again, and that kind of, so we did write a lot of the initial ideas there, and then we would come back and kind of finish them off in the studio here. And then towards the end of the kind of 2.5 year process of the writing, it was solely in the studio. The last like 4 months in the lead up to finishing it, we were just in here like hashing it out every day. But yeah, mostly, I guess it has mostly been tracked here in London.
Speaking of the recording process, like you said that obviously Pedestrian was quite heavily involved in it, but do you prefer to just almost completely cut yourself off, or is there anything you were listening to at the time that you felt like particularly, you know, in that time and place, that influenced the album?
We do tend to try and like listen to a lot of music whilst we're writing. I think that generally when we are writing, though, I guess we are quite busy and we are solely focused on that, so it's not like we'll wake up every day and try and like listen to something new or put on a couple of records. But like, I guess at the start of the week, or towards the end of the week, if we're running out of ideas, then we'll like put on a playlist, and then something will usually trigger an idea. But I guess during that time, Unknown Mortal Orchestra released the album Multi Love right at the start of us writing Kingdoms in Colour, and that was massively inspirational for us in terms of like the sound that he had, and like him using lots of tape and like the sonic palette of it. And Radiohead's last album,
Moonshaped Pool.
Yeah, Moonshaped Pool was massively inspirational as well.
Alabama Shakes.
Yeah, Sound and Colour by Alabama Shakes. That sounds incredible, and so I think we were trying to kind of in a way replicate that in our own way. And Krungbin, I guess, have been a massive inspiration for us, hence us trying to work with them. There's a band called the Durdur Band from Somalia. I think they disbanded back in the 80s, but that sound definitely fed into us trying to look to get some more influence from stuff outside of like Europe, I think.
Sadal Kurani, Haino Samiro, Sadal Kurani, Ashaqana Sirqiyo, Sakalki Kasobu.
you say, not even necessarily stuff that you were listening to around recording the album, but what records are in heaviest rotation in your collection at the moment?
Do you know what? It's been a lot of like falling into that Spotify trap of just like building playlists and getting lost in their algorithms, and like I think more so for me than Chris, but I find a lot of like stuff I like through the Discover Weekly and kind of the playlist they generate.
On the weekend, I got some of my records out at home, and I had Sly and the Family Stone Fresh album 1, which was actually a massive inspiration on this record. What else? I think I put on like James Blake's album Overgrown on the weekend. I think it's just quite varied, really. There's not anything that I would go back to like regularly.
No,
I think
kind of do for short periods of time. Like I listened a lot to the new Kaja Bonet album, like recently, and had that on quite heavily rotation. But then it kind of just gets pushed aside.
Yeah.
The King Crawl album actually was something I listened to recently, since the release.
Oozed.
Yeah.
Is it Oozed?
Yeah,
that is.
Use maybe.
Yeah.
I seem to sink lower, gazing in the rays of the solar. In fact, we made a pact, but now I think it's over. I'm red and white, but he sipped on KH soda. Fuck that's Coca-Cola. As TV sports, the Olympic Ebola. I think we might be bipolar. I think she thinks I'm bipolar. He left the crime scene without the Motorola. Still had dreams of being young Frank Cazzola. For at least for now it's all over. Yeah, at least for now it's all over. I seem to sink lower in Biscuit Town. In Biscuit Town.
It's just kind of like dipping in and out, and then like in the interim, just kind of feeding off that like Spotify algorithm, which seems for me anyway to be working.
Yeah,
really well.
it works a dream for you. It's annoying. I jumped on it this morning and just went for Release Radar and Discover Weekly and just didn't find a single thing.
You got to give it. You got to give it time.
I know, but yeah.
It started off really badly for me, and then it's like a year in, I've started to reap the rewards.
You released a single named after one of your favourite clubs, the now shuttered London institution, Turnmills. Would you say you had some of your formative musical experiences there?
Yeah, it was one of the first clubs that I went to. I think it was the second. I think Fabric was the first when I was like 17, and then the next time on my 18th we tried to go to Fabric, and the queue was like snaking around the corner. So we all went like round the corner, because like Turnmills is like about 100 metres away or something from Fabric. So we kind of stumbled on it by accident, and half of us got into Turnmills, and then the other half. I think you were there that night, but
yeah, I actually didn't go till 2 weeks later. So I've never really thought about this, but I ended up in a bar called Fluid, which also there was some really good like house music playing, and so we both had the same experience of like wanting to go to like a True Players drum bass night or whatever. And then ended up like hearing like electro and house music. So we probably should have called the tune Fluid instead of Turnmills.
Yeah, because I don't know how formative my experience was at Turnmills. I like, as much as I loved the club on that particular night, I didn't really discover anything new. Whereas like Liam came away from a little sushi bar
being like fully
and he was
inspired,
like, wow,
we've just heard this music and we don't know what it is.
I'm playing this like before
DJ Colin Dale was playing.
Yeah,
and we were just like not even Shazam back then. We were just like asking him for literally every tune that he was playing. Like, what is this? What is this? What is this? And then for years after, we tried to like replicate those tunes in our previous project.
Yeah. It's quite funny actually. But yeah, I guess as a club though, Turnmills is a place we visited again for the next like 2 or 3 years, because I think it didn't close down that long after we first went.
No.
Probably a couple of years. But it was definitely a club that between all of our friends, it was our favourite, and it just had like so many like nooks and crannies in it, and like it had 5 rooms I think, and different music in every room, and like different genres in every room. So I think it was just for us like a really exciting place to go.
It also turned our heads to look at other clubs as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously we knew of Fabric, which is why we come into London to try and go there, and then both having discovered different clubs, it was like, well, what else is there? So it was kind of like not so much spending a lot of time there, but that opening our eyes up to like the possibilities of other clubs as well.
Are there any other sort of formative venues apart from, you obviously mentioned Fabric, but were there any other venues that really stick out in your head, like London clubs that you remember, like just it blowing your mind, like how much you could discover in terms of the programming or the tunes that the DJs were playing?
The End was also a massive club for us. Again, more for like drum and bass, but then I do remember towards the later years it started putting on Together Nights, I think. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it did.
Canvas was another one as well.
Yeah, Canvas was an amazing club. That was part of the whole Canvas, the Cross and the Key, which were in King's Cross, and they again all got shut down. I'm pretty sure like within the same year.
We were at one of the last nights there.
I think it was the last night.
Yeah, when we like a New Year's Eve party that we went to with like Boys Noise or whatever. That was like, that was very inspiring.
I think that was the last ever night, and then it wasn't long after that. It all just got like knocked down. Flats built.
So basically, from your perspective, you've experienced firsthand how hard it is to keep a venue open in this city.
Yeah, that is very true. Even since moving to London, there's certain venues that we go to. We went to a few times. Like, this is cool, and then it would disappear. It's like, oh great, that's gone. Never really had like an institution or like a place that we've visited time in, time out that's like part of us growing up, or especially not being from London or living in London, so we're always dipping in and out. And even, do you know what, even like we studied up in Leeds, like some of the clubs that there, like they shut down as well, or they've gone now, or they changed ownerships, like.
Yeah, but I guess less so, because even say like there's a club up there called Mint, which is
just
one that we used to go to, but that like has quite a long lifeline when you think it's been open for a long time, whereas clubs in London, I guess Fabric obviously has had a long lifeline, but it has been shut down and it's reopened, and it's just one of those kind of it's a city where nightlife does become quite transient, I guess.
Is there any city you've either like played in or toured in that you feel has a nightlife scene that you would like to see like emulated? Like, have you ever got to a place, someone's taking you on a night out and gone like, this is exactly how it's supposed to be?
It's a bit of an obvious answer, but I think I'd probably answer for both of us on it, saying Berlin is like a place that we love, like where we really truly like relish the nightlife and we get stuck in, and there's a lot of clubs we like, and lot of live venues as well, and we've been inspired by it. And also like even just hearing recently about like the new moves to like fund like projects to help them soundproof the venues and stuff like that. Like they really do know how to look after their nightlife, because they see it as like a popular and valuable part of their industry. And I think there's definitely a lot to be learnt from the way they do things over there.
Actually nurturing the nighttime economy.
Exactly,
like,
yeah, and
as if
allowing it
it's
to be a bit
part
more
of the
free as
economy.
well, because like obviously you have to be safe and you have to have security and stuff, but I can't help but feel sometimes with the security that you have to approach in London to get into a club, by the time you get in, the kind of vibe's been completely stripped, because you've gone through such a vigorous, like it's as if you're flying like internationally or something. Like it's not a very good vibe. But yeah, Berlin definitely.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think, when was it we first went? It was like 4 years ago.
Did we DJ there first?
Yeah, we played
Watergate.
at Watergate,
Yeah.
and then we went out to a club called Catablau afterwards, and a friend took us there, and we both got inside, and it was like being 18 again, and we were just so excited.
Playground,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
this is like insane, like what you're allowed to get up to in there. It's just such a sense of freedom. Like they had
People
like
you meet
fire
as well.
pits, the people you meet, they had like fire pits outside, which obviously we wouldn't even get a sniff at in the UK. Like imagine that. But and yeah, people were kind of just dressed how they want, doing what they want, and obviously it's difficult to get into the clubs, but I guess that there's a reason for that, because you are kind of allowed to sort of like just
Run
just
riot
give
a
it,
little
yeah,
bit, yeah.
On the edge of love. Is she already knows something that you're too old to learn? She could have it all, and I'll give it a second thought. Oh, lose my life and notice she's already moved on. Moved on.
Around the sort of album announcement, you did an all-night set at Corsica Studios in support of the Save Nightlife campaign. How did that initially come about? And is it that it tied into some theme of the album, or was it literally just like, no, this is bullshit, and we really need to?
It's both. You know, like we care. Obviously, we care about the nightlife in London a lot, and we're aware of what's going on. And we're also very open to charity work as well. We like to do as much of that as possible. And the timing was just perfect, because we'd also had the track Turnmills that was kind of written and named in honour of the club, and obviously with its closure and stuff, it kind of just got everybody thinking that like we should do something about it, and this is the perfect tool essentially to raise some awareness and also raise some money.
It was also off the back of Shapes closing, which is a club underneath our studio, and that was actually kind of the catalyst to the original idea of the track, because it was written like the day after we put on a party down, and it was kind of in the last few months of the club's lifeline. But so yeah, we wrote that, and then kind of it just felt like something that we might have heard back in the day in Turmoils, but in a very warped way, if you know what I mean. And then I guess, like Liam said, off the back of that, it felt like the right thing to do to kind of dedicate it towards London nightlife.
guys kind of have coming up? Like, what does the sort of future hold for you guys in 2019?
Lots of touring.
Yeah, I had loads of touring. In February we're heading to the States, and we've got like a 3-week tour there that goes, that's starting on the East Coast and finishes in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And then we come back and then we're doing Brixton Academy, which is pretty nuts. And then doing a tour of Europe for 3 weeks.
We're basically like, obviously we spent such a long time on the record, the live side of it is very important to us. So now it's like our time to really just like hit the gas on that and just do as many shows as possible and just kind of like showcase the album in a way. Like, just, I mean, like the live side of it for us is the best way for people to hear it. So just going to go out and do that all next year and then see where we end up.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Cool, yeah, nice one for coming down.
I'm blowing smoke in the eye.